because history books are often about the kings and the generals and the religious leaders and all of that, and women are written out of history. And so what you can do in historical fiction is tell the story of all of us, because we were all there too. The key to great storytelling, it sounds so old-fashioned, but it is beginning, middle and end. What are you trying to say? How are you going to say it? What's going to be the closure? Because the one thing that people need in stories is to feel the full stop, to know that it started, they're going to be given this great story, and then they're going to get all the answers in the end. So the same with marketing. You've got to tell the whole story in just a couple of sentences. Me, I get 600 pages, but it is that thing. Set it up, tell them what you're going to tell them, and give them all the answers at the end, so that when you shut the book, you go, I don't really get stuck, because writing stories it's a process, it's a long process. So certainly some days it doesn't flow as well as other days, but there's a great quote from the painter Picasso, and he was asked once, near the end of his life, when he was one of the world's acknowledged greatest painters, why he still went to his studio every day. And he said, when inspiration arrives, I want it to find me working. So I go to my desk every day and I just keep going. And if it's not very good one day, it'll be all right the next day. So I just keep working through it. And as for where the stories come from, for me, all of my stories come from place. It's from being in Carcassonne in the southwest of France, Toulouse, with the new novel Burning Chambers in Franschhoek in South Africa. And when I'm in a particular place, it's like I hear the whispering in the landscape, and I start to imagine the people that might have been there, and it's almost like a shudder, I can feel people kind of coming behind me. And so it's always place, and then the history of the place, and I start to research it, and before you know it, there are characters, and once you've got characters, you start to get a story. Well, I'm always interested why I'm asked about why I write strong female characters, because why wouldn't I? I'm a woman, and I don't think that men are often, why do you write strong male characters? So I think it's a question of just they are the characters that come to me. That's what I'm interested in. History is a pendulum. It goes backwards and forwards. Lives of women were worse in some periods and better in others. And I do think it really matters that we tell the story of the lost stories of women's history, because history books are often about the kings and the generals and the religious leaders and all of that, and women are written out of history. And so what you can do in historical fiction is tell the story of all of us, because we were all there too. And so that is very important to me, the idea that women in the past were just as strong and purposeful as we were. The idea that everybody in the past was all terribly humble and downtrodden is simply not the case. So just putting women back in history is really what I'm doing with my novels, and I think that it's why people like them so much, because we all see ourselves in that. We all see, the mum that we had, or the granny that we heard about, or the, woman down the way that was, who didn't go too near. So that's what I'm doing, really, just telling the truth of history. I discovered about feminism because I was brought up in that way without knowing what it was, in that my parents believed that men and women, girls and boys, should be judged for how they behaved and what they did. That's what the F word means, fairness. That's it. And so it was only when I got to university I realised it was a thing and read books about it and started to think. And actually, things like Margaret Thatcher being elected, and realising that was odd, because people kept saying the first ever female Prime Minister, and I remember thinking, why? That's really strange. So I think most of us, men and women, girls and boys, and people who are signed differently, of course we're feminists, because everybody's a feminist, because it does mean everybody be given the chance to prove themselves and not being held back because of their gender, or indeed their race, or their ability, or their religion, or anything of those other things. Marketers need to know about it, because I think marketeers can both tell the truth of society, but can also influence things for the better. So the power of putting a woman as the boss in an ad, as opposed to always being the man. The power of putting the black family there, rather than it always being the white family. Tell the truth about everybody. We all share the same space. There are men doing these things, women doing these things, people of different races, all of this. Marketeers, by knowing about feminism, or just thinking about equality of representation within marketing, can change things, because it's always about the role models. A young person watching the television and seeing a great ad that has all sorts of different people in it thinks, oh, yeah, they look like me. And once you have people who look like you, then you start to dream bigger. And I think marketing is absolutely essential in that. I think it subtly can change the way that people see the world. What I'm doing next is The Burning Chambers is the first in a sequence of 4 novels, and it's 300 years of history, Romeo and Juliet story, Catholics, Protestants, a feud, a missing will, all of these things. But Burning Chambers is set in Toulouse, Carcassonne and Puy-Vert in 1562, and the next book, The City of Tears, I'm now about finally to go back to my desk, having been on a promotional tour, and start writing that, and that's set in 1572, and it starts in Paris on the eve of the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre.
Exciting stuff.
Yeah, thank you.